بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. الأخوة والأخوات، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. وكل عام وأنتم بخير، وتقبل الله منا ومنكم صالح الأعمال. وأسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يعيد علينا رمضان وأنتم في خير وصحة وعافية. نرحب بكم نيابة عن زملائي في اللجنة التنفيذية للمجلس السعودي للجودة في هذا اللقاء الذي نتطلع أن يكون لقاء مشوق ومفيد ولقاء معرفي للجميع بإذن الله تعالى. قبل ما نبدأ اللقاء عندي بعض الهاوس كيبنج أو بعض الإرشادات الخفيفة بخصوص اللقاء. حيكون بإذن الله تعالى مترجم، وكالعادة يمكنكم الحصول على الترجمة الفورية عن طريق الضغط على، حتلاقوا تحت موجود دائرة كده كرة أرضية أو مكتوب عليها باللغة الإنجليزية. الضغط على هذه الدائرة موجود، حيفتح معكم رابط مكتوب فيه language interpretation. اختار اللغة وحتختار اللغة العربية، ثم يتم تفعيل الترجمة بإذن الله تعالى بوضوح. ثم بعد كذا لو حيكون صوت المتحدث خفيف جدا، يمكنكم إخفاؤه بالضغط على ميوت أوريجينال أوديو. طبعا للأخوة والأخوات الراغبين في الحصول على الشهادات، بإمكانكم عمل كابتشر لهذه الشريحة والتسجيل من خلال هذا الرابط، أو الحصول وتسجيل بياناتكم ودفع الرسوم المطلوبة والحصول على الشهادة المطلوبة بإذن الله تعالى. طبعا عندنا خبر بسيط جدا وهو مهم جدا حقيقة، هو إطلاق المجلس السعودي للجودة، مجلسكم المبارك، لترجمة لكتاب من الكتب المهمة جدا للراحل البروفيسور محمد زائري، وهو كتاب بناء القدرات المؤسسية، وهو يعتبر من الكتب النادرة جدا تتحدث عن الكوربريت كومبتنسز. مهم جدا لأصحاب والمهتمين بالجودة والتميز المؤسسي الحصول على هذا الكتاب. والكتاب هذا الآن متاح من خلال هذا الرابط، وهو متوفر لدينا في المجلس السعودي للجودة. كتاب جدير مهم جدا حقيقة عن هذا الموضوع. كمان نحب أن ننوه أنه عندنا اللقاء القادم بإذن الله تعالى حيكون الملتقى الثالث عشر للقياس في يوم الأحد 21 مايو. حيكون عن بعد في الساعة 4:30 تقريبا، ويمكنكم التسجيل في هذا الملتقى عن طريق الرابط الموجود في هذه الشريحة. نحب دائما ننوه ونذكر السادة الحضور والسيدات بأن يطلعوا من خلال موقع المجلس السعودي للجودة sqc.org.sa، يطلعوا على فعاليات والبرنامج السنوي للمجلس، وستجدوا بإذن الله كل فائدة وكل مصدر معرفي يساعد الجميع في عملية تعزيز المعارف والخاصة بالجودة والتمييز المؤسسي. Now I want just to shift to English. I'd like just to introduce Dr. Robin Mann. Dr. Robin, he is the head of Center for Organizational Excellence Research at Massey University in New Zealand. He is the chairman of Global Benchmarking Network. He is a board member in New Zealand Business Excellence Foundation, and he is a co-founder of BBIR.com Limited. Maybe Dr. Robin talks about it later on during the presentation, which is a best practice website resource. And he is founder of the International Best Practice Competition and Organizational-Wide Innovation Award, and founder of the Trade Best Practice Benchmarking methodology. Dr. Robin in SQC, actually, we consider him as a partner in knowledge transfer and knowledge sharing, and he is a leader in benchmarking practices and methodology. Dr. Robin has served as a business excellence and productivity advisor to many countries, most recently working for the Abu Dhabi Government Excellence Award and the Mohammed bin Rashid Government Excellence Award. Dr. Rabin was awarded the Harrington Ishikawa Medal in 2011 for his valuable contribution to the advancement of quality in Asia Pacific region. Please welcome Dr. Rabin, and I'd like just to give you the floor, Dr. Rabin, just to share your presentation and start. By the way, any questions were received in the Q&A as usual, and we will present it to Dr. Rabin at the end of the presentation. Dr. Rabin, welcome, please, the mic for you.
Okay, thank you, Salam, and thank you as well, Dr. Ayed, for the invitation to give this presentation today. It's a privilege to share with you some of the work that I've been doing, because I do see the relationship with the SQC as a strong partnership, and that partnership will grow in the future. So what I'll be talking about this afternoon is really why you should consider benchmarking for your organization and why it is so important. I started first doing benchmarking probably about 30 years ago now, when I used to work for a biscuit company as a process improvement manager in Edinburgh in Scotland. And so I used to do some benchmarking of how we were doing our production lines against other organizations. I then went to work in London, and I ran the food and drinks industry benchmarking initiative. Again, helping organizations to share knowledge with each other. I then went to New Zealand. I started the New Zealand Benchmarking Club. I then did lots of work in Singapore, started major work for the Singapore government, helping the government to do benchmarking. And in recent years, I've been working very heavily with the United Arab Emirates, assisting them with many, many projects. And I will be talking quite a lot about my work in recent years with the United Arab Emirates in my presentation. So this is where I'm actually based in New Zealand. If you've not been to New Zealand, please do visit. It's absolutely a stunning place, absolutely beautiful place. But unfortunately, I don't spend enough time there as I'd like because of my work, which takes me around the world. If you do want to find me in New Zealand, this is where I live. So I'm very difficult to find, but I live in a very beautiful place. And so I can't stress enough, if you've not been to New Zealand, please do come to visit. And whilst you might not be able to find my home, you could email me, and I'd love to welcome you to our beautiful country. Okay, so this slide here really shows the work that I'm doing currently. You can see here the trade best practice benchmarking methodology. I'll be talking about that in this presentation. Also, you can see the bpir.com website resource. bpir.com stands for the Best Practice Improvement Resource. Inside that website, it's got thousands of best practices, many benchmarks, lots of tools and techniques you can use to improve performance. And the strength of that particular website is that all the information can be searched through the perspectives of different business excellence models. So if you are using the EFQM model, as many of you will be in Saudi, then you can search all the content through the perspective of that model. Or if you wanted to use a Baldrige model, for instance, you could use that model too. You can also see in the bottom left-hand corner my work at Massey University. I also have a 20% job at Massey University, New Zealand's largest university, where I run a research centre focused on learning more about business excellence and benchmarking. So one recent study was looking at how different countries around the world try to engage organizations on the business excellence journey. Therefore, looking at which countries are most successful in terms of helping organizations progress from a level of awareness of what business excellence is to actually applying, you know, the whole philosophy and concept of excellence inside their organization. And Sasso, on behalf of the King Abdullah Aziz Quality Award, Business Excellence Award, actually participated in that research as well. And so if you're interested in the papers that have come out of that research, again, you can email me and I'll be happy to share them with you. Another PhD research project we're doing at the moment is looking at what infrastructure do you need to have in place to support business excellence. Therefore, do you need a specific department focused on business excellence to support the organization's efforts on excellence? Or do you need to utilize consultants to help you on the journey to excellence? So it's looking at the infrastructure, the role of the leadership inside the organization, how much resources need to be devoted to excellence just to make it happen, to support it initially and then sustain it over the longer term. So that's quite an exciting project. Also shown on this slide is a flyer for the International Best Practice Competition, which I'm pleased to say that SQC is a partner. So SQC is our partner for Saudi Arabia, trying to encourage organizations to apply to this international competition. And, you know, this is really what, you know, my focus is. My focus is helping organizations to share knowledge, helping organizations to learn from each other, and helping organizations to do benchmarking, which to me is the most effective way to learn from other organizations. So this particular competition is a way to facilitate that. It's a very easy competition to enter because it just requires you to submit a very simple application form, about 5 pages long, of why you think your particular particularly strong for a particular process or system inside your organization. So it's looking for good or best practices that you have. They could be in leadership, they could be in human resources, it could just be in something quite simple like in terms of time management, or it could be a best practice with regards to your core processes of your organization. So whatever you think you do well inside your organization, we encourage you to share that information. And then we invite organizations around the world to then give a presentation on their best practice. And that presentation is only 8 minutes long. So this is a great way for sharing best practices in a very short period of time, enabling you to learn from many, many practices, because organizations that enter this competition share their presentation, they can listen to the presentations of other organizations. So quite quickly you accumulate quite a bit of knowledge, and you can quite quickly discern which best practices would be of interest to your organization to apply. So on this slide it shows previous entries from Saudi Arabia, from Ministry of Hajj and Umrah, from Saudi Aramco, from Obican, and also Zamzam, sorry. Also, with respect to the best practice competition, we assess all the best practices using the IBPC certification scheme. And this is where we determine whether a best practice is a local best practice, like a regional best practice or a national best practice, or whether it is an international best practice. So 4 stars means a local or national best practice. 5 stars and above means an international best practice, which means that practice will be of interest to other organizations in other countries. And the beauty about this approach is that initially, when many organizations apply for the competition, they might have their best practices assessed as 3 stars or 4 stars, but over time, they will then improve their practices to become international best practices. The competition is open till the 15th of May, so you still have time if you're interested. So I have just introduced the word best practice, and I have a particular understanding of what I believe a best practice is, but you might have a different understanding. Everybody can have a different interpretation of the word best practice. It's quite subjective term. And so with any terms like best practice or benchmarking, when you're discussing these terms with other people, you need to have a discussion to make sure you reach a consensus in terms of your meaning, because otherwise there could be confusion related to how these words are used. The reason why best practice, the best practice term is quite subjective is because the word best is quite subjective. Best can mean different things to different people. So the best could be a winner of a contest. It could mean excellence. It could mean innovative. It could mean the prettiest. It could mean inspiring. The best could be the cheapest. It could mean leading edge. So there's different connotations to the term. This is why you need to qualify and what the term means to you and your organization in order to utilize this approach effectively. The way that I consider best practice is in the same way that Dr. Robert Camp understands what a best practice is. Dr. Robert Camp did the pioneering work in benchmarking in Xerox in the early 1980s. And you can see his definition here, and I think this is a fantastic definition of what a best practice is. He says there is no single best practice because best is not best for everyone. Every organization is different in some way. Different missions, cultures, environments, and technologies. What is meant by best are those practices that have been shown to produce superior results, selected by a systematic process, and judged as exemplary, good, or successfully demonstrated. Best practices are then adapted to fit a particular organization. This is a fantastic definition because it shows some key components of what a best practice is. He's saying that a best practice must show superior results. The only way you can show a practice has got superior results is if you're comparing it to the performance of practices in other organizations. So you need to be able to show that, one, you have got some data, some facts to show you achieving good results, but to show you achieving superior results means there's a comparison of your results against other organizations, and you've identified another organization with higher levels of performance than yours, which means superior results. He also says a best practice is selected by a systematic process. Well, that systematic process is benchmarking, which I'll be describing in more detail later on in the presentation. He also says they need to be judged as exemplary, good, or successfully demonstrated. What he's meaning there is that, you know, this result that you achieve, this superior result, should not be a one-off, a one-instant event. It needs to be sustainable. It needs to be able to be demonstrated over a reasonable length of time, because this gives you confidence. It is then a best practice. So if a practice has been refined and enhanced over 1 or 2 years, this gives you more, and it's been implemented not just in one part of the organization, but right across the whole organization. This gives you more confidence that that practice will also work for your own organization. But also at the end of this statement, he says best practices are then adapted to fit a particular organization. So this is absolutely key. You never copy best practices. Well, occasionally you might, but generally you don't. What you're trying to do is determine, when you learn about a best practice, what would be applicable from that best practice to apply inside your own organization based on your own organization's business maturity, business environment, your culture, and where you are now. So normally when you find a best practice, you cherry pick parts of it to apply to your own organization based on your own organization's business environment. So Dr. Robert Camp, he did the pioneering work in benchmarking, and so he was the first really to develop a systematic approach to learning from other organizations, the 10-step Xerox methodology. In a very short period of time, they applied this concept of benchmarking in Xerox and elevated Xerox performance from being an organization that was going out of business. It was really struggling. They were going to have to downsize the organization to an organization that became world-class. They were the first winners of the EFQM Excellence Award and the first winners of the Baldrige Award in the United States. To make that transformation from an organization going out of business to become world-class took a period of about 7 or 8 years. And they undertook over 200 benchmarking projects to do that, using a systematic approach. So whilst we've just talked about best practices, I think it's also worthwhile clarifying what we mean by benchmarking. Yes, it is a systematic process, but again, when people use this term, they often have a different understanding of what that term is. To me, for instance, has been working in this area for many, many years. So I think a good way to think about this is to divide the word benchmarking into two. So one part is the benchmark and the other part is the ing. So when we consider what a benchmark is, it is the comparison against a standard or point of reference. Therefore, in a business context, the benchmark is when you're comparing performance against another organization, and another organization has a higher level of performance, they then have set the benchmark. So it's comparing performance measures, whether it's on customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, whatever it may be, but the organization which has the highest level of performance has set the benchmark for that particular KPI. So that's what a benchmark is. It's useful for identifying which organizations are doing well, but it doesn't help you actually improve your own business performance. This is why the ing added on to benchmark is so important, because ing means you're acting on that information. You're acting on that comparison information. You're doing something about it as a business. So for me, when you add the ing, it means you're learning from the higher performing organizations, finding out what they're doing differently. And it's even more than that. It's not just learning, it's then applying that knowledge to your own organization, making changes to your business processes to improve performance. So when I talk about benchmarking, it's not comparison. Benchmarking to me is a whole process of learning from other organizations. So this is actually the definition that I use for benchmarking, because this is why you're doing it. Comparison is important, obviously, but the only reason you're doing the comparison is to help you to identify which organization is performing better so you can learn from them. So benchmarking is learning from the experience of others and applying that knowledge to improve organizational performance. So this is a trade methodology. I founded this methodology about 20 years ago and now, and it's used by thousands of companies around the world. Used it initially a lot in New Zealand, but then it was used for the Singapore government, and in recent times done a huge amount of work in the United Arab Emirates. So it's used for used by all Dubai government entities, but it can be used for by the private sector or the public sector. So what it is a systematic process, as Dr. Robert Camp says. There's probably more case studies which show the success of this methodology than any other methodology, including the Xerox methodology, because we've just managed to write them all up, all these fantastic success stories where organizations have used this approach. So it's systematic because it consists of 5 stages, T, R, A, D, and E, and underneath those stages are 34 steps. So it's a very prescriptive methodology which enables you to undertake a professional benchmarking project. Benchmarking in many ways is similar to doing just good research, where it's a master's research project or a PhD research project. So it's really, if you just follow this methodology, it's just ensuring you're doing good research to make sure that when you find these best practices, they're relevant to your organization. And then it's helping you then to implement them and manage the change process so that ultimately your performance will improve significantly. So the T, the terms of reference, means setting the project plan, deciding which opportunity or challenge that you're facing inside your organization where you'd want to apply benchmarking to. So it might be, for instance, you want to improve the level of employee motivation inside your organization. So you set up a benchmarking team and then you'd set a benchmarking plan. So in that benchmarking plan, it would be saying, you know, what is the aim of the project? Who are the stakeholders who are going to be impacted by the project? What are the likely benefits of the project, both in terms of improving your KPIs and also in terms of financial outcomes? Looking at the risks associated with the project, etc. So the terms of reference is setting the project plan. The R stage is reviewing the current situation. Too often I see organizations say they're doing benchmarking and they miss out the review stage. So they might say, for instance, yes, we've got a problem in employee motivation, or employees are not motivated, and then straight away they want to move on to learn from organizations with high levels of employee motivation. So they miss out the review stage. So this is absolutely key. So the review stage is making sure you thoroughly understand what the problems or issues are that are facing you for that particular area you're focusing on. So it's looking at your processes, your systems, your procedures, talking to the relevant stakeholders. It's also making sure you've got performance metrics in place to measure your current performance, because ultimately you want to improve your performance. So you need to start measuring where you are now. So this is quite a rigorous process of understanding exactly what the challenge is, and you sort of break down that challenge into more detail. So when you break down that challenge into more detail, it enables you to think with greater clarity of which organizations you want to learn from, who can help you address those particular problems. So for instance, if you've got a process made up of 6 sub-processes, it might be through the review stage, you've identified out of those 6 sub-processes, 2 of them are performing really well, while 4 of them are deficient in some way. So therefore, you'd want benchmarking partners, organizations to learn from, who've got specific expertise or knowledge or best practices with regards to those 4 sub-processes that are not performing particularly well. And then you then move into the acquire stage. For the acquire stage, the main way now today you would learn from other organizations, at least initially, is through undertaking desktop research, just doing research on the internet. Because just doing research on the internet, you can find an awful lot of good information about potential good or best practices, but also at the same time, potential benchmarking partners, organizations you may wish to learn from to find more information about, you know, what they're doing well. So desktop research is an important part of the acquire stage. So it'll help you to find best practices in themselves, because sometimes you find really detailed articles, but otherwise it'll help you to identify organizations you want to learn from. And then now, because of the internet as well, often you can do Zoom calls or Microsoft Teams calls to organizations all around the world to actually learn from them, rather than necessarily going to visit them. So you can do a lot of learning for you utilizing the internet. Site visits, if you can, are still fantastic. You're going to get a greater depth of information of learning from other organizations if you do visit other organizations, but that can't always be the case. And in most cases now, you'd only do that from a local perspective. It's too expensive to travel internationally unless it's absolutely of critical importance to your business. In most of the times you can utilize, video calls to do that learning. So the acquire stage, you utilize desktop research, site visits. You might even use surveys to get information. So there's a variety of ways you'd use to obtain best practice information. The methods you use will be dictated by your terms of reference, your project plan, depending on how long you can spend on this project, how much resources should go in the project, etc. Following on from the acquire stage is the deploy stage, the implementation stage. And again, if you've been managing your projects in a professional manner using this methodology, then this should be quite a smooth process, because you should have been involving the key stakeholders in your project right from the start, so that when you identify the best practices, you've already got agreement, consensus from your key stakeholders, which might be the process owners or the employees affected by the process, to these solutions being put forward. So the deploy stage will then follow, and then you evaluate the final outcomes of the project. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of detail to this particular methodology. Many of these steps can be worked on in parallel, so you're not necessarily working on these steps sequentially all the time, but certainly you need to undertake all of the steps. The methodology is called TRADE because we want to make sure always in your mind that benchmarking is about developing relationships with other organizations, developing what's called benchmarking partnerships with other organizations. And a partnership to me is where both parties, both organizations benefit from that relationship. So when you do a benchmarking project and learning from other organizations, you always got to be thinking, well, what can this other organization learn from my other organization? How can they benefit from this information exchange? Because you might need to go back to that information again in the future to get more information or more detail. Or you might want to learn about another process from them, or they may want to learn from you. So usually organizations that are good at benchmarking will have 20 to 30 strong benchmarking partners that they go back to again and again and again to learn from. So this is why we call it TRADE. TRADE focuses on the exchange of trade of information and best practices to improve the performance of processes, goods and services. So really you're trading information and knowledge with other organizations to improve your own organization's performance. The reason why benchmarking is the most powerful change management approach there is, from my perspective, and I've utilized all different approaches to business improvement, is because of the following. A benchmarking project builds change management into its whole process. So yes, you'll start a project with a project team. They will do the majority of the work on a benchmarking project. But throughout the project, they'll be involving the various stakeholders, other people who are affected by the process, internal customer suppliers, process owners, the various people from the hierarchy of the business in the process. So what's happening on a project is not only the project team, but all the stakeholders involved in that process are going on a learning journey. So they're all going on a learning journey to understand the current problems with your systems and processes, to then learning from other organizations what to do to improve. And together as a big stakeholder group, they agree on what needs to be implemented. So this is absolutely key, because you could get consultants in. Consultants have great knowledge. They usually know what are the best practices. But a consultant will ultimately leave your organization. The consultant might also not have a good understanding of your own organization in terms of its business environment, its culture, and what best practice would particularly fit your organization's environment. But as I say, they will leave the organization, and then it might be difficult for employees to sustain that practice because they were not inherently involved in coming up with that practice. So benchmarking involves everybody, so they're involved in the solutions. There's a great Confucius saying, which is, tell me I may forget, show me I may remember, involve me and I understand. So a benchmarking project, involves all those key people. The other aspect about
Dr. Ribbon?
Yep.
Allow me we remain with the 10 minutes, okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
So the other aspect about benchmarking is that it's not, people think it's often just learning one or two best practices. Most benchmarking projects would generate between 60 to 120 ideas of best practices. And these are not just from the learning from other organizations, but once you start the benchmarking process, your team members, your stakeholders will also have ideas too. So benchmarking projects is a combination of the ideas of your stakeholders who are going on this learning journey, combined with the best practices learned from other organizations. And this generates true innovation. It generates what we call next practices, new innovations, new breakthrough practices. In the last few years, I've helped to guide over 40 benchmarking projects for the Dubai government, of which they're shown here. I'd love to talk about all of them, but I don't have the time. But the beauty, the thing is, all of these case studies are written up. You can read about them in books for free. So some lovely projects, even like Dubai Heart Safe City. This is trying to make Dubai the safest place in the world to have a heart attack. So there's some cities like Seattle and Copenhagen. If you have a heart attack on the street, your likelihood of survival is 65%. In Dubai and in most Western countries, your survival rate if you have a heart attack on the street is 10%. So again, it's the question is, how can we elevate the survival rate in Dubai, or indeed in your own city or country, to 65%, like Seattle and Copenhagen? So that's a really interesting project they've been undertaking to bridge that gap. What I'll just briefly go through, and I've only got about 10 minutes left, is probably less than that now, is the process that we run.
It's okay, Dr. Robin, you can take more. Okay, no
problem. Okay. The process that we run with the Dubai government is that each year we would facilitate between 10 to 15 projects, and they all start off with all the project teams being trained in trade. So, and they get certification for that. Once they complete a benchmarking project, they can reach then benchmarking proficiency, and then they can reach ultimately benchmarking mastery if they've completed at least 2 projects, and one of them is at a commendation level. So this is really trying to encourage the professionalism of benchmarking. This is an example of a trade project management spreadsheet. So we use spreadsheets to help to manage the projects and guide the projects. On each trade spreadsheet, there's probably 40 or 50 worksheets with various benchmarking tools that you can use to assist you with a benchmarking project. So this particular worksheet here is just showing the terms of reference for one particular project, for sharing its aim, the background to the project, the objectives, etc. Another slide here is showing how the project team is managing to complete each project step and who's been responsible in their team to complete that project step. Another slide here is showing some of the tools they've used, like fishbone analysis for the review stage of trade, process flow charts, it's mapping their performance data, and also a best practice selection matrix. When we run these projects over 1 year, we have every few months these knowledge sharing summits. So all the project teams come together to share their progress on their projects. So this is where a lot of learning occurs. And we also provide additional assistance to team leaders and benchmarking facilitators from each team, and go to visit their organizations as well to understand more about the issues they're facing, and also ensure they're undertaking their best practice searches in a very professional manner. And then at the end of the year, we assess the projects again. They give a presentation, but they also submit a benchmarking report, which describes the story of their project. And those projects are assessed using a 7-star system. So these are ones from just before the COVID pandemic. And these are some of the projects that were assessed, I think, 2019, 2020, and some of the benefits for the projects. So we can see Dubai Police, Dubai Municipality. So Dubai Police here was trying to improve the security of checked-in luggage across, the free terminals for Dubai airports, because if there's a potential problem with your checked-in luggage, then often they don't identify that till quite late, and it might be already a passenger is getting onto the aeroplane, and his other luggage is being loaded into the plane, and they've now identified a problem with checked-in luggage, and they now have to stop the plane from taking off, so all his luggage could be his or her luggage could be taken off the plane. So it's trying to improve the security and how all that process was managed. And for this benchmarking project, substantial changes were made. And now, because of that project, it's saving $18 million per year, because obviously planes which are stopped and not taking off at the airport incur a substantial cost. Other projects here were for Dubai Municipality, improving the digitization of the tendering process of contracts, again, substantial savings, etc. But projects can be on anything. This is the beauty. It's all helping you to do a learning journey to improve the process. So all of these projects I've talked about are accessible. You can read about them on these, you can have the slides after the presentation. So through those links, you can have access to them all. What I will leave you with is, it's only a 3-minute video presentation. Is a project from Dubai Police from a few years ago, from 2018. And I just like this example because it'll help to explain to you how they use a trade methodology, and it'll give you some more insights. And this is an example of how they use the methodology to improve how they conducted maintenance of police vehicles in their vehicle workshop. So let's have a quick listen, and then we can conclude the presentation.
Dubai's police benchmarking project is carried through a unique benchmarking methodology called TRADE. In the terms of reference stage, the aim is to implement best practices in vehicle fleet maintenance to improve vehicle availability and labor productivity of the Dubai Police Mechanical Department to world-class levels. The Mechanical Department is one of the key operational departments of Dubai Police that focuses on the maintenance and repair of vehicles to ensure their optimum use. The department has 7 main sections with more than 150 employees. The specific targets set were to increase productivity for the mechanical department from 40% to 70% and increase vehicle availability from 88% to 95%. In order to meet specific targets, Dubai Police Mechanical Department sets the following objectives. Identify the factors affecting the performance of the department, August 2017. Create an action plan, September 2017. Study best practices of other organizations, December 2017. Prepare and execute best practices, January 2018. Enhance productivity, vehicle availability, and production capacity, March 2018. During the review stage, the benchmarking team carries SWOT analysis, develops a fishbone diagram, and holds meetings with high-level employees and directors to understand the current performance, practices, and systems in order to define areas of improvement. A survey for technicians and employees at the lower grade is carried out to understand their perceptions of the factors affecting productivity and vehicle availability. Over 108 employees have completed the survey. After completion of the survey, the fishbone diagram was revised with the team identifying the following areas of focus: spare parts management and storage, equipment, material, tool, manpower and labor capabilities, management system and software. The team has identified performance measures as well as performed statistical analysis to set the average hours for the tasks using mode and median parameters. At the beginning of the acquire stage, Dubai Police defined 13 criteria for the selection of potential benchmarking partners. At the start, the team identified 62 potential benchmarking partners. The team conducted 9 site visits. At the end of this stage, the team identified the following: 31 best practices identified via site visits, 35 improvement ideas suggested by the benchmarking team, 86 best practices ideas reviewed, desktop research, site visits, and ideas, 23 best practices improvements ideas recommended for implementation. During deploy stage, all 35 improvement ideas are assessed based on a set criterion. Key activities implemented at this stage included data cleansing, closing the Burr Dubai mini workshop to improve efficiency, establish a workshop with audio-visual screens to improve productivity and visual management, launch of the incentive scheme and working hours management system. Evaluate stage is all about the final results. The results of the entire projects have been phenomenal, with increase in labor productivity from 40% to 72.2%, exceeding the target of 70%. The increase in labor productivity contributed to a savings of 5,120,367 dirhams. Increase in vehicle availability from 88% to 95%, which resulted in a savings of 14 million dirhams, with future savings estimated to be in excess of 20 million dirhams. The increase in vehicle availability resulted in extra savings of 8,680,000 dirhams. The elimination of replacement costs of about 40 vehicles. Through best practices in vehicle fleet maintenance, Dubai Police won Trade Benchmarking Proficiency Certificate with Commendation, 7 stars, by the Center for Organizational Excellence Research in April 2018, and the Dubai Government Excellence Program, Dubai We Learn Initiative. Another feather in its cap was during the 10th Continual Improvement and Innovation Symposium, Best Practices Management, in which Dubai Police secured first place in service category in November 2018 by Dubai Quality Group.
Okay, I think we're going to leave it there. Just the last thing I was just going to say is that because of the success of the benchmarking in Dubai, then even for the COVID pandemic, then the Executive Council decided to do a benchmarking project to address the COVID pandemic to make sure there's a fast response time. And people who participated in 7-star projects were all pulled together to work on a project specifically to make sure that the Executive Council was well informed of what it should be doing to improve the outcomes for its citizens based on, international best practices. So with that, I would have more to share, but I don't think we can be here all day. So I'm happy to answer questions now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Robin, for this valuable presentation. And thank you very much for accepting to share the presentation slides with our audience today. Because there was a lot of questions talking about this issue. So we'd like just to inform everybody that we're going to share the document in our website, sqc.org.sa. Thank you, Dr. Robin. Actually, we had a lot of questions here. We'll just try to start with Mr. Ghazi Matari questions. He said, how frequent benchmarking is required and what is the best way to analyze the benchmark data result?
Well, I think how frequently for me, you're doing benchmarking to improve a process. So I would be having, it depends on the size of the organization, but you should be always having a number of high-level benchmarking projects being undertaken all the time on your key processes. So if, for instance, from your organizational hierarchy, you've got from that 7 or 8 major departments, then each of those departments should all be undertaking at least one benchmarking project per year on a key challenge that they're facing. So very simplistically, I would answer that question in that way. Ideally, more benchmarking projects, but I think that would be a good way to start. In terms of the comparison data, this is where there's, I think, a huge misunderstanding on this. A lot of organizations spend an enormous amount of time trying to get comparison data. And even with the best will in the world and the most scientific mind, you start to get into the huge debates of whether you're comparing like with like, because once you start looking into the definitions of these KPIs and how the formulas are worked out, there starts to be differences. So for me, the data is not really as important as people seem to think. The reason why you're doing the benchmark, getting the data, is to identify other organizations that are potentially stronger than your organization for a particular process. That's what we're using the data for, to identify other organizations that are potentially better than you, who can then learn from. So that's the reason. So when you have that mindset, that comparative data is not as important. Yes, it's good for strategic prioritization of what you want to improve, but it's not good for improvement per se. You have to learn from other organizations.
Excellent. There is another question. Is from anonymous attendees. His question is, how can I be a benchmarking projects?
Well, so
yeah,
as far as I'm aware, then we're the only organization, we're part of the global benchmarking network. We're the only organization that provides a certification scheme for benchmarking. So that would mean you require to become trained in the trade methodology. And then once you're trained, then you would need to submit a completed project. And so we provide a template form which you can use as a guide of how to submit a completed benchmarking project. And then we would have assessors who assess your completed project and then would grant you, for instance, a higher level of benchmarking certification, which would become benchmarking proficiency. And then you can reach benchmarking mastery if you've submitted 2 completed projects, and with at least one of them reaching a commendation level, a 5-star level.
Okay,
so
good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Mr. Adnan bin Hamd asking how to use benchmarking to improve the profitability of a company.
Well, that's what it's about.
Yeah, I think
So,
during the video clip you shared, there was some references, figures that.
Yeah, well, you don't undertake unless, the reason why you'd start a benchmarking project in the first place is because there's a burning issue, there's a problem. It might be you've got a huge amount of customer complaints. It might be you just know that a process could be working better, and there's a lot of waste in the system. So you just know that there's a problem, or you've got a strategy in place, and you're not sure how to deliver it. So generally, you apply benchmarking to a major problem like this, and you start off with the terms of reference. And in that terms of reference, you have to stipulate the expected benefits from both a KPI perspective, but also a financial perspective. And if you can't justify on your terms of reference what the expected financial benefits are likely to be, then your project should not be approved to proceed with. So this is why the review stage is actually very important, because you can start off with a quite loosely defined project. You know there's going to be major value. Maybe you're going to save, I don't know, a huge amount of Saudi riyal or whatever, or US dollars. So you know, but you're not sure how much. But then through the review stage of trade, learning more about the process and systems, how much you can improve, you can then strengthen the terms of reference and have greater clarity in terms of the expected financial benefits from the project, which will then help you decide whether you should continue with the project or not. But on average, every project for the Dubai government produced a return of $3.9 million per project.
Oh, good.
And that's over 40 projects. It's an impact assessment being done, and that's either benefits directly for the organization, or for government organizations, the beneficiaries are the citizens in many cases, like time saved or better health outcomes. So again, you can still quantify that in a financial manner.
Good. I have a question here, two in one, talking about what is the prerequisite to establish a benchmarking center in Saudi Arabia, and what is the relationship between benchmarking and quality and excellence?
Good questions. But,
this is all about the presentation, I guess.
Yeah, I think that, again, with the benchmarking...
Let's start with how to, if we have an idea just to establish a benchmarking center here in Saudi Arabia, what is the prerequisite? What is the steps that we need just to go ahead and do this?
Well, firstly, you need to obviously, again, I'd say you need an aim of what you're trying to achieve with the benchmarking center. So you need a clear vision of what you want it to deliver. And there are, so for me, you'd want to promote the awareness and understanding of benchmarking. You would want to then be able to help organizations utilize the tools of benchmarking. So you need to then provide training and maybe networking events to facilitate the sharing of information. And again, you probably then want some recognition system as well for organizations that apply benchmarking well and can show demonstrable effective benchmarking projects. And also you might want to support the benchmarking center with, a resource. I mean, we've got obviously the bpr.com website resource, but we've got some Saudi information in there, best practices information in there. But obviously what would be appealing if you could collect lots of best practices, good information that could then be shared amongst the people who are utilizing the benchmarking center.
Okay, good. So what about from the organizational point of view? I mean, who's supposed to take care of this center in the government?
Most government entities in Dubai would have a benchmarking department, but usually quite small. It varies, but again, the key lesson from Dubai and also other countries, if you are calling something a benchmarking unit or a benchmarking department, then don't call them a benchmarking unit or benchmarking. Call them a benchmarking coordinating unit or a benchmarking coordinating department, because otherwise everybody in the organization thinks that unit is actually doing the benchmarking, and is actually finding the best practices. They're not. They should just be coordinating the activity. The people doing the benchmarking are the people who have great understanding of the process, the frontline workers, the managers responsible for a process. They're the ones should be doing the benchmarking, but they need the skills and the knowledge to do that, which can be supported by the benchmarking coordinating unit.
Good. Dr. Maha Bushal asking, what is the criteria to select the benchmark and how we can approach them? Sometimes people, they find difficulty to to be accepted by others to make the benchmarking?
Yeah, well, so the benchmarking criteria is very, very specific for every project. That's why you do the review stage of trade and identify precisely what you need to learn. And then you would do the desktop research, really, to see whether you can find best practices associated with that already, or potential organizations that excel in that area. And then you would need to contact them. And it can be difficult, but generally I'd say not. It's more about making sure you approach people in a professional manner, and making sure you're approaching the right person in each organization. So you need to approach the person who's responsible for that particular process or practice inside another organization. So obviously, if you approach the senior management team or the CEO, maybe you won't get a response, or you get some kickback. But so you need to find the person inside the organization who's responsible for, and this is why social media is very good. Resources like LinkedIn, Plaxo, all the social media resources can help you target the right person. So again, if you're using LinkedIn to approach somebody, you've got to make sure your own personal profile looks good before approaching somebody else, because before somebody accepts you, they look at your own personal profile. But I think my experience is that most people are very willing to share. If you've identified the right person inside that organization, they see that as a form of recognition. It's like if you said to me after this, look, Robin, I enjoyed your presentation so much, can I spend an extra half an hour with you talking about benchmarking? Then I'm likely to say yes, because it is most people are human and want to help. So it's really about how you approach people.
One practice I've noticed during my doing benchmarking during my career, that some organization, they consider the benchmarking and helping others as one of their objectives. I mean, in their appraisal system.
Yes.
So that will be very much attractive. And other thing, during my career also, I depend on the networking and friends in other organizations. So
that is key, and that's why the Saudi Quality Council plays such a critical role, or the benchmarking center, because I'd call that informal benchmarking. So informal benchmarking is where you establish these networks and friends in other organizations. So when you do a formal benchmarking process using trade, you know who to go to, and you know that you're going to be received in a favorable manner.
Yeah, actually, this question's been repeated by some group of people here, like Mr. Rashid Idris and Ibtisam Al-Dakhil with the Dr. Mann Bashar. So we answered this question. Another question regarding how we would benefit from artificial intelligence in benchmarking, if there are any specific applications or tools for this.
I'm not aware of, to be honest, but it's certainly an area that should be explored. I mean, that would be a good project for a Saudi benchmarking center to undertake.
Actually, we thank you, Mr. Ahmed Banwir, for this question, and it opens the door for more research in this regard. Bilal Engin, how we could encourage organizations to share their best practices. We have talked about it. Mr. Abdullah Halawani, what is the impact of culture on benchmarking? What is the impact of culture on benchmarking? In other words, the corporate culture, does it affect accepting benchmarking with others?
It does to some extent, yes, but I mean, because often you have some organizations that, they want to learn best practices, but they're not willing to share what they're doing.
Yeah.
And this is because really there's a lack of understanding perhaps in their own organization about benchmarking at the senior management level. So their own organization is very reticent about sharing, because they think any sharing, I think it's often might be the case of junior managers, to be honest. They're sometimes worried about what they can share, because they think if their senior managers find out they've been sharing that, they could be in trouble. So So that particular culture of trust and accountability, that needs to be better established inside the organization. So we had a previous question about business excellence, and so organizations which are more mature in excellence, they have a better understanding of benchmarking and are more open to it, and the way that benchmarking fits into business excellence is that business excellence is the ideal approach to identify the opportunities for improvement in an organization, and for some of those opportunities for improvement, then you'd use benchmarking to elevate your performance in the future. So that's really the link. Benchmarking is a fast track to improve your business excellence score over time.
That's completely true. I'd like just to remind our colleague Dania just to share the survey for this event while we complete the presentation. أخت دانيا لو تشاركي معنا بس الاستطلاع. دكتورة مها أيضا تسأل دكتورة مها asking about what is the training program that you train Dubai police in this regard.
Well, it's the training program is usually it's a 3-day training program, because that's some countries we do it as a 2-day training program, but normally it's a 3-day training program in the Middle East. So it sort of runs, from 8 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon for over 3 days. So again, that might be something we discuss with SQC to run another training program, but we can do training programs remotely as well. So either face-to-face or remotely.
Yeah, good. There is a question from Muhammad Rafi from Saudi Airlines Catering.
Yeah.
Talking about the competition you've shown there.
Yes.
What is, I think you have mentioned that it is in the website. He's saying, is there any specific format or guidelines for submission to the competition?
Yeah, there's a simple form to complete. So you just need to go to their website, and the website address is shown on the slides anyway. And I think there's a link from SQC's website as well to the International Best Practice Competition website. But otherwise, it's bestpracticecompetition.com. And then you should be able to find the information.
Okay.
It's a simple form to complete. And as long as it's completed by the 15th of May, because the presentations are then going to start in June. So we need enough time to assess the written applications and then send out the invitations for the presentations.
Good. Mr. Sheikh Al-Tabi asking about if there is 2 organizations working in the same business line, how can I choose and select one of them as a benchmark? Well,
this is where benchmarking is a little bit problematic, because I mean, you can't. I mean, there's rules and laws around learning from competitors if these are competitors. So if they're not competitors, it's fine. But for competitive benchmarking, you can learn from publicly available information that you find, or undertaking some mystery shopping, whatever it may be. But if you're trying to learn more detail than that, then it might be you need some lawyer advice with regards to that, because it obviously there might be potential opportunities for collusion, working the markets together, etc. So that's the only time benchmark is a little bit of concern in terms of competitive benchmarking. Yeah, good. Mohammed is asking about if is it possible to compare myself with some other organization not in my field, like functional benchmarking? Well, yeah, and I should have said that for the last person's question as well. In most cases, you don't need to benchmark against an organization in the same sector or same industry or exactly the same, because, as I said previously, that review stage of trade is most important. You've got to break down and identify precisely what's wrong with your particular process. And once you break it down to subcomponent parts, normally you can do cross-industry benchmarking. So I would never do a project just looking at organizations from my same industry, never. Maybe 20% of organizations would be from my same industry, but 80% would not be once you've broken the process down. I have a colleague in Singapore he was very successful at benchmarking. You would never look in the same industry at all, you know. So it's
Hussein Rawi asking about, is trade methodology applicable for non-for-profit organization?
Yeah, it's applicable for any type of organization and any type of challenge you're facing.
Okay, good. Dr. Maha Bushal, talking about what is the role of partners in benchmarking.
Well, we just call the organization you're going to visit and learn from or communicate with, we call them benchmarking partner. And obviously we want them to be as open as possible in sharing their information on a particular process, which means that at the same time, your organization needs to be as open as you're expecting them to be. This is why it's a partnership. You both need to be open. You can't be expecting another organization to share information if you're not prepared to share too. So this is why, again, that review stage of trade is very important, because if you've got, say, 10 questions you want to ask another organization, make absolutely sure you've asked those 10 questions to your own organization first and got the answers, so that if they return the question to you, your benchmarking partner, you can answer and say, look, we've already answered these questions ourselves. You know, this is our performance, these are our systems, you know, so you both learn together.
Okay, good. Actually, that's it for the question now. I'd like, can you share your email, because some of our audience ask about your email.
Yes, sure.
Or you can just spell it out so they can get it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I can't answer. I could pose a question, can I? I'm not sure on the system where I'll do this.
You can share it. You want to share the slide?
Yeah, well, I can. Oh, I could share it on my slides. Yes, hold on. But I've just responded to one person. Maybe that's on the chat box, but I'll just share my slides again, and then we can.
Actually, we received a lot of thanks from the audience for your valuable presentation and valuable information. Dr. Robin, we'd like just to thank you very much for your, accepting our invitation today. And we wish to have a continuous relationship in the future. الأخوة والأخوات, I think it's there now, right?
Yes, right at the top, yes.
Excellent. So this is actually Dr. Robin email, so you can capture the slide. And before we just close, I would like just to share with you, with Ms. Dania, a small gift from SQC, Saudi Quality Council, for you, Dr. Robin.
Okay.
It is only a certificate, that appreciation certificate. Wish you the best, and actually we enjoyed the presentation, and thank you very much again, Dr. Robin.
No, and thank you for giving me so much time. I thought we'd be closed after 1 hour, but no, I appreciate the opportunity to share, because that's what benchmarking is all about. We all should be sharing and learning from each other. So, and I'd love to learn more from you guys as well. So take care. Thank you. I would like also to thank all audience, ladies and gentlemen, for your attending today. And we wish you to see you again, inshallah. Thank you very much again, Dr. Robin, and see you. Bye-bye, everybody. Okay, bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.